Welcome back to the Berg podcast. With me today is Dan.
Hey, everybody.
And Ford.
Hey, how's it going?
And today we're talking a little bit about what we do. I don't know about you guys, but I get the question a lot, or actually maybe it's not even a question, but a sentiment a lot when I start to talk about our company here, Berg Construction, that not a lot of construction companies do a wide array of things. A lot of companies seem to specialize in certain types of work. And I actually, being from outside the construction industry, I really didn't know that. I didn't know that people didn't do the wide variety of things that we do. Is that normal? Are we not normal?
Just to break it to you, we're weird.
Yeah, we're not normal. So it's we had talked about a lot of times when we first started looking at branding and bringing who Berg is to the forefront and who we want to be, that there was no real direct competitor for us because of not only the diversity, but the size. So when you take some of the bigger companies around, that everybody knows, the names that everybody's really familiar with, they do a lot of different things and cover most of what we do, with the exception of they don't do the special projects piece anymore because they move on from that. Mm. And then there's, companies that do the special project piece and the smaller of our commercial that don't do the other things we do. So that's what really makes us different, makes us weird, as Ford said, is we're still doing, you might be putting in a septic one day or doing drain work around someone's house. And then the next day be working on a 70-acre site, putting a landfill cell in.
Well, I think that's one thing that what this came up to is that in the old days, our teams rotated around, sometimes maybe even to their detriment, but a guy could be one day working with one team, the next day with a different team, and kind of as the staffing was needed, kind of moved there. And we've kind of moved more towards crews and specific, makes people be able to get better at what they're doing, but it also, then they might go to a same job site for 6 months, a year, 18 months, and never see what the rest of their team members are doing. And so, they might get hired on, go start working on a large project and not even grasp what else Berg does because of the fact that they're not rotating around. They're not seeing some of the other types of projects that we're on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. And so when I first got here 8 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, congratulations. I just saw a post somewhere that it was just a couple of days ago.
I know. Well, and Dan's creeping up on 10 years here in a couple weeks. And I think Joe's
at 11.
I think Joe was one day after me hit 11 or something like that. So yeah,
how many does Ford have?
42.
Yeah. 42. Got it. All right.
Yeah, I was born in 1981. So do the math there.
Yeah, for tax purposes, it was not 41.
Oh no. Yeah. But yeah. So when I got here, we were a smaller version of the same thing, but we didn't have a commercial division, a landfill division, a residential projects, paving, whatever it might be. We didn't have division, so to speak. We just did a bunch of different types of work, and it was the same guys. So some of the guys would, like you're saying, one day they might be working with a commercial site work division, or group, and then the next day maybe they're jumping to a small residential project, and the size of the equipment is often different. The skill sets can vary from one size or another. And we've actually drifted from that a little bit as we've gotten bigger. It's actually allowed us we have more people. We have some people who have specialized a little more, and we've got some people who have probably never seen work from the other divisions besides the one that they're always in. Right? I mean, is that fair to say?
I think so, and I think that we always talk about an elevator pitch, or if someone asks you what you do, or if I don't know, there's someone on the team a couple while back, and they didn't even realize something our buddy I have a friend that could use that service, but I didn't even know that that's something that you do just right. Because of they're in their mode of what they do. Probably the guys that drive the trucks, the dump trucks and the lowboy, they see the most of everything, right. But there's a lot of people that might not even grasp the different things or knowing about something that's happening just because they're so focused on what they're doing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? You know what's interesting is we didn't get there in like a singular straight line as life is. So part of the way that we started to create this idea that we needed divisions was actually it grew out of the exact opposite, which was when we started Secra, and that was going to be our biggest project, and we realized how much we needed. At some point we had like 22 people there, and I think we only had like 18 employees. So just everybody.
Carol counts for like 4 or so.
Carol counts for like 4. And then we had to hire people, and we were bringing people in. And in doing that, we lost touch a little bit with some of our original clients, like the original people who helped us build this company, as I, as a leader, wasn't able to manage both pieces. And I focused in on making sure that Secra went okay. I dropped the ball on the other ones. Ford had the vision to be able to go out and say, we need to bring somebody else in who can meet those clients where they are and be a person who can be high touch enough and deal with the clients and learn the business and do that. And we did that. And so that was the first like split that created sort of this division feel where they're going to do that. But then the crews themselves actually happened organically from the field, where the guys started to feel like we would be better served ourselves as operators and laborers, as well as foremen and superintendents, if we weren't having a guy that we train him to do exactly what we want to do, and then 3 weeks later he's doing a completely different job, which may or may not benefit him. A lot of times we would take special project guys out, and it would be good for the bigger divisions because they learn these skills with special projects, and it hurts special projects. But we would also have guys who were in commercial and able to do certain things. And, Scott would say, well, we need a couple more guys. And we're like, all right, we'll send you a couple guys. And they were guys that were useful and served a purpose and were able to be productive members of the team on the big site. But then we sent them to Scott, and they were like, okay, this guy, while he might be useful, doesn't know any of the things we need to know, because special projects, you need to be able to do a lot of different things and have a wider knowledge potentially. You might not know the scope of the bigger jobs, but you could end up doing anything. You could end up on any piece of equipment, and you could end up, you got to be able to grade with a skid loader. You can't always grade with a dozer. You know what I mean? So all these little things. And so that it's funny how it came from the clients and us wanting to be more responsive to our clients and be representative of the work we did and value that, but also from the field wanting to say, like, we need to have a better handle on who's in our individual teams.
Yeah.
Well, and I hear it from people, not just clients, but, we've heard it from potential clients and stuff. They're like, oh, we didn't know you did that stuff anymore because we think you're just doing X. And it's like, no, it's a lot more letters of the alphabet that all bring this together.
At its core, we really have like 4 divisions, right? So we've got our special projects. We call them special projects because they're sort of projects that don't fit collectively into one group. Some of it's residential-ish work. Some of it's small commercial work. Some of it's very like specialty, like septic type systems or athletic fields or things of that nature, right? And then we have our commercial division. Commercial division is exactly what it sounds like. They do a lot of commercial site work, some utility work, things of that nature. We have our landfill division, which probably doesn't need a lot of explanation.
You don't need to explain that, I don't think.
Landfills. So, and then snow removal, right? It's kind of, in my opinion, sort of like the 4th division, where we do a very like concentrated, specific type of snow removal, kind of fills the gaps seasonally. And we do some of it self-perform, some of it subcontracted, managing some relationships, etc. That's the core 4, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you could spend all day because there's splinters within each one of them, and some of them carry between the two. And that's the benefit that people might not see, is that we can do, so there's a small builder around here, and like one of the benefits, we can do the septic systems for them. But then if they have a larger project where they need heavy equipment, we do have the depth that we can help them with that too, instead of them having to hire another contractor to do that piece for them. Or we do a bunch of stuff with golf courses, and that's, it's kind of a blended thing in there between, because sometimes it's pipe work, so it's kind of a utility piece. Some of it is the commercial side for some of their buildings. So there's kind of, again, it blends it between some of the different categories. But that's part of how it kind of benefits to have all these different things in our estimation. But there is also kind of, as Dan was saying, skill sets matter for certain things. And so when someone new's coming in, another benefit is too with having the different ones is that maybe a team member wants a change of pace or wants to do something. We have another opportunity possibly for them. They don't just do this or you have to work somewhere else. We might, if they're a good team fit, they might have another opportunity here.
Yeah, it's definitely created some growth opportunities for some of our people, right? They came in as a laborer maybe in one division or the other. As they got the chance to operate some pieces of equipment or some small machinery, they may have moved to a different division, learned a different skill, et cetera. So it has created some growth opportunities for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing here too is that I think part of the divisions, not so much the divisions, we keep saying that, but part of the scope, the width, the diversity of the work we do is that we really do pivot. A lot of times people say pivot and they actually are abandoning whatever they were doing and then just going in a different direction. And I think an example with us right now is paving, right? Like 3 years ago, we did a lot of paving and now we're not doing much paving. And, we've had to reach back out to some of our friends and other companies and say like, hey, we need to get this paving covered because labor is what we're about, right? Like in other words, we talk about this, without operators and laborers and foremen and superintendents and everybody else in that field, we don't have anything. You can have the biggest fleet in the world, but if you have nobody to run the equipment and do the work the right way, then you just got iron sitting still. And I think that Ford has been really willing as the owner to sit there and say like, okay, we're going to pivot because we don't have the right people. We'll still do all the work. We'll be responsible. We'll cover it and we'll come back to it when it's appropriate. And we did that very beginning with paving where we started to do paving and then it became a little too much. And Colt was able to go out on his own and start a paving company and be successful. And we said, well, this is perfect now. Colt can just do the paving. And then as we continued to get bigger, we took up probably a little bit more of Colt's bandwidth than we should have and put a little more pressure on him and had to support him. And eventually we said, you know what, the opportunity's here. We have enough paving to bring it back in. And we brought it back in. And then, just through personnel and other issues, we went away from it again. So it's that funny pivot, and it's sort of golf courses the same way. We started to refer to golf as its own division, even though it's sort of spread across a few different things, like Ford said, based on what the work is. But when we see an opportunity that's in the diversity, that we can operate in that delta of where we think we can do that work effectively, then we're willing to go do that work. And we just try and keep all the doors open. So, the basis of this podcast, we were going to talk about this topic today, was Ford saying that some of our people don't realize the opportunity that's there outside of the little piece that they see every day. And we're not really necessarily talking about, like a superintendent or a project manager role. We're physically talking about you might rather do this type of work because some people are really engaged in doing special project work, which tends to be quicker. It's a quicker turn. You're in and out. You're on different sites. It's different every day. Some people like to go to work and have the same place to go and the same job to do. And just every day they go workmanlike and just go about that process. And after 6 or 8 or 12 months, they move on to another job and do the same thing. So each of those things might make a better opportunity for somebody you're already working for us or somebody outside the company. And it's not common for a company of our size to do that. And that's sort of Ford. If we want to approach that subject, that's another topic. When I first came on board with you, one of the things that I was trying to learn and I had to understand was what do construction heavy civil companies look like? Like, what are they? How many people are they? How much equipment do they have? Forget revenue because it didn't matter. Ford was talking at that point when he was trying to help me to understand and learn about people, about how many people it took. And I remember one of the things Ford said early on was there's small civil companies and there's big civil companies, and that's really all there is. You have 150 to 300 plus employee companies, and you have 20 or less employee companies, and you don't really have anybody in the middle because it's a difficult place to navigate. But I think we've found a home there, being able to sort of straddle that line and be the big company for the smaller guys and the small company for the bigger guys. And I think that it allows us to stay in touch with our clients and our workforce and be productive that way.
Well, back to the word pivot, I find interesting. Like, to me, pivot is like a hinge. Like, you're still grounded in one spot, but you can vacillate side to side. In today's code word, pivot is basically change direction.
Go a different direction.
Yeah.
It's abandon.
Yeah. It's basically drop exactly what you're doing and roll out.
Disrupt.
Yeah. And so I think that use of that word is so challenging because in my mind, it's like, yes, this is a hinge. You're going to have your center and you can rotate side to side, but not take off and leave where your base is. And so for us, it's so important to have that base, and we can still go do multiple things, but we still have the center to start from and then work our way out from there.
Well, and do you guys both feel like we've widened that base? Like in that pivot process, we've widened the base. Like, because the base would have been special projects, right? The base would have been the residential, the septics, the remedial work, all that sort of stuff. That was the base.
Some of the environmental
work. And as we pivoted, when opportunities arose, we widened the base. And so now, people would say, well, like, you have a significant footprint and workload in commercial and in landfill. And so that would be our base. And that is the beauty of pivoting, is if you do that, you widen out to where you feel comfortable, versus there's a lot of words in like modern society in the last 5 or 10 years, which we've completely changed what the word means, and pivot's one of them. And I mean, there's one specific conversation. I think all three of us were there, and they referred to it and they said, well, we're going to pivot like you do. And I was like, that's not pivoting. That's abandoning what you do and deciding you're going to do something completely different. That's not pivoting.
Yeah. In sports, they don't call that pivoting anymore. That says traveling.
Yeah. It's a penalty.
Yeah,
it's a foul, regardless of sport. You can't do it.
Well, you become like maybe a tree. We can get into, different euphemisms for it, but part of it is too, by in the beginning, being able to swing that wide, we learn new skills, met new clients. And so, it becomes more of your comfort zone. So it doesn't feel as much as a pivot as it becomes more of the center, because you already have that experience there. And then you can still go out and do different things on different sides of the fence, Act 2 closures or all that kind of stuff that we've been able to do has all been built out of the base of doing site work, excavation, however you want to call it, heavy civil, just depends on the terminology and where you are in the country, I think. But it's all about moving dirt, and, that's the base of it. And then everything else kind of boils out from there.
Yeah. I think one of the terms that we struggle with a lot internally is divisions, right?
The base word is divide. You wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, divide. Why would you want to divide your team, divide your resources? And sometimes it's more like, like dividing up the slices of a pie, right? Or like we're creating something we can share. But it's difficult to think of it in that way. And I think what started the conversation in, amongst the three of us here was our divisions have become is sort of currently at least essential to part of how we operate. But in such a way that some of our folks, like you mentioned earlier, Ford, haven't seen the work another division does. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think
it just is.
Yeah, as long as they know, right? Because a lot of the benefits that we've talked about over the last few minutes here about having those various areas and scopes of work that we do is it gives people opportunities as long as they know, as long as they're familiar with the idea that, hey, it's not just this one thing in this one place. We do a bunch of different things.
And so much of it, with how it impacts us from a division team standpoint is just like goes back to sociology, just like personal human interaction. Like even when we had the insurance breakfast the other day, and we always talk about it. The guys not only tend to work together, they tend to park in the same place at the restaurant, and then they tend to sit at the same tables.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to like assign seats. Like we're never going to do that.
No.
I don't see that. It's just so opposite of how the three of us like to operate. But by the same token, you end up with this, we're all one team. You know what I mean? Like how many times, like, and it doesn't matter what we talk about. Like right now, we could play like a game where like, say the first thing that comes to mind, sort of thing. But like if you say like office and field, right? It's like we just, as humans, I feel like we don't feel good about ourselves unless we identify a group. And the only way to identify the group is to identify the other group. Sort of, I've always said, like, you can't, if all you knew was good, if everything was perfect, it would be unnerving. What was the Matrix movie when they said about, they built the first Matrix and it was completely rejected because it was perfect. There was no problems. Everybody was fine. And humans rejected it because we didn't like that, because you have no way to know it's even good. How do you know it's good if you don't know bad?
If you don't know what's not good.
Right. And so we sort of, I think we identify, and it's been amplified recently in society as a whole, but it's the funniest thing, because what we wanted to build was this team that could do anything and then just let people specialize in what they want to do. And I think we've succeeded in that. But I think as a team, we need to continue to press forward and say, like, there's no difference. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just different. In order to do these different types of work, we need people doing different things. We need different equipment. We need different estimators. But without any one of those pieces, the company doesn't work.
Well, I was thinking about, there's two foremen that are in different divisions, air quotes. But at one point they worked together, and they were both operators. And so I know that they still talk to each other and they help each other out, even if they're doing something in a different division. So if someone runs into something, one guy's going to call the other guy's going to call back and forth, or personnel issues, and like they build upon that, but they had a common base. That's one thing with snow that really helps, is because then we're all doing it. It doesn't matter what kind of work you do during the summer, you're all doing it, but they get to know each other and become friends, or like they have that common base to start from. And now they do different things within the company, but they still have each other to lean on, because at one point they were both doing the same thing. So that's part of that growth process you were talking about, but also just allows different team members, even though they don't see each other daily, they don't work in the same job sites, they still can communicate with each other, and help each other out. Yeah,
I feel like if you're going to divide teams on snow, the team would be Ford and I, and then everyone else. It would be Ford and I, who apparently we love snow, and it's everybody. We just want it to snow constantly, and people have to work until everyone wants to go home, and everybody else who doesn't want to do that. That's as it's been explained to me. That's the team. Ford and I love snow.
Those are the lines. Okay.
Yeah. As soon as it gets to be like September, they're like, well, Dan and Ford wanted to snow. Yeah. So that's the teams there. We got. It's a rough team. It's just the two of us.
Yeah. Well, you think about, like, a lot of this stuff has come out of necessity.
Like too. Yeah. Brian's on team snow.
I gotta admit.
Yeah. So there it is, guys. So that's why we're going to continue to do snow, is because team snow is Ford, Brian, and I. So.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about how the necessity of things happened. We started, with a mini excavator, and in the wintertime, you don't do a lot of dirt work. Mm-hmm. This last winter, notwithstanding, but you don't do that because it's not available usually. So you had to find something else to fill that season. So that's how you got into that. And then, we won our first landfill job because we needed a project to do at that time frame, and everything kind of builds out of that. And it just keeps, we'll go back to snow here, but the snowball keeps rolling and keeps getting bigger every time you do some more stuff. You learn new skills and you do things like that. And so that's a neat part of being able to, help out with clearing some trees that are down for the local township, to moving 1 million yards of dirt. Like, it's all the same. It's just who you're helping. It makes it is what it really is the difference.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably a good place to wrap it up. I think we could go on for a while about the variety of things that exist inside of the dirt world specifically, but construction in general as well. But yeah, I think it's just good. It's important that our people know that there is variety, and it's not necessarily always what's right in front of them. So, thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you got something from this, and we hope you join us again for another episode.